My family had already finished dinner when I arrived at the restaurant for my parents' 30th anniversary. Mom handed me a $1,000 bill. My sister laughed. "You're just our ATM." Everyone joined in, until I tore the bill in half and walked out. 3 months later, the bank called me. "My name is Cassandra, and I'm 34 years old." For years, I chased the phantom. The phantom of being truly seen and loved by my own family. And it all came crashing down on one rainy Seattle night that started like any other, but ended with a betrayal so profound it would shatter everything I thought I knew. I'm a freelance graphic designer, always priding myself on being on time, but that evening, I was running ridiculously late for my parents' 30th anniversary dinner. By the time I practically burst through the restaurant doors, breathless and full of apologies, my family was already finishing dessert. Laughing. Without me. My heart ached, but I forced a smile, clutching the gift bag with those matching Apple Watches I'd splurged on. Never, not in a million years, expecting the brutal truth that was about to unfold. From the outside, my family looked absolutely perfect. Seriously, like a picture from a magazine. My dad, Jack, he's 58, a bank manager at Seattle First National. Always in suits that cost more than my entire apartment rent. My mom, Eleanor, 56, an accountant, absolutely meticulous about numbers and, let's be honest, appearances. And then there's my older sister, Stephanie, 38. She was the golden child, the blueprint. Prestigious law school, partnership at a downtown firm by 35, married to a surgeon, 2 perfect, photogenic kids in private school. She lived the dream, their dream. And then there was me. Cassandra. The black sheep. The wild card. I dared to go to art school instead of business or law. Dared to be a freelance graphic designer instead of climbing some corporate ladder. My income? Yeah, it was a roller coaster. Sometimes I was feasting, sometimes I was famished. But I was building a name for myself, carving out a life, supporting myself comfortably in my little, charming apartment in Capitol Hill. But in my family, it was always about achievement. Always about comparison. Dinner conversations growing up? They were basically a Stephanie highlight reel. Her straight A's, her debate wins, her scholarship offers. Meanwhile, my B+ in math would get a disappointed sigh and that classic line, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" My art, the things I was good at, winning the school art competition, getting my designs featured in local exhibitions, they were just cute hobbies. Not real accomplishments. Art is wonderful, darling, my mom would say, patting my hand like I was a child. But you need something stable to fall back on. You hear that? Something stable. As if my passion, my talent, wasn't enough. Then, 3 years ago, everything changed. I got this insane stroke of luck. I bought a lottery ticket on a whim, literally just a random coffee run. And to my absolute shock I won. $200,000. It wasn't retire on yacht money, but it was life-changing. Enough to obliterate my student loans, build a solid emergency fund, and invest in top-tier equipment for my design business. I mean, my whole life, I'd sworn I'd keep a windfall like that totally private. But then, during a family dinner, my parents asked why I seemed less stressed. And like an idiot, I just mentioned it. And in that instant, the air in the room shifted. I wasn't the family disappointment anymore. No, suddenly, I was a potential resource. And trust me, that phrase would haunt me for years. It started innocently enough. My dad, Jack, needed a new car. His broke down unexpectedly. "Just a small loan, Cass," he said, all charming. "I'll pay you back with my year-end bonus." $7,000. The bonus came. It went. No mention of repayment. When I gently brought it up, he looked genuinely wounded. "We paid for your college, Cassandra. Family helps family." Oof. That hit me right in the gut. Then came my sister Stephanie's turn. My niece, Emma, wanted to go to this prestigious summer camp for gifted kids. $4,000. Stephanie and her surgeon husband, who somehow couldn't scrape that together from their lavish vacation fund, couldn't spare it. It would mean so much to her, Stephanie cooed, and it's not like you have kids to spend on. My blood ran cold hearing that. Then it was my mother needing a kitchen renovation. My brother-in-law needing investors for a business venture. My nephew needing a new computer for school. Each request got bigger. The pretense of repayment? It just vanished into thin air. Any hesitation from me? met with immediate guilt trips about family loyalty or jabs about how I just got lucky while they had worked hard. But the money itself? That wasn't even the most painful part. It was seeing, with agonizing clarity, how conditional their affection had become. Before the lottery, I'd get the obligatory birthday calls, maybe an occasional invite to a holiday. After? Suddenly, I was in. Weekly dinners. Group texts. Invited on family vacations, though it was subtly understood I was footing a good chunk of the bill. But even with my wallet constantly open, I never felt truly welcomed, truly valued. The comments were constant. Well, it's not like you have a family to support, or at least your money is going to good use through us. Even when I hit a major professional milestone, landing a huge contract with a major tech company, my accomplishment was completely overshadowed by my nephew's soccer trophy at the same family dinner. It hurt. It really did. But despite all of it, I still, foolishly, desperately, craved their approval. Their acceptance. So when my parents' 30th anniversary rolled around, I saw it as a lifeline. A chance to truly reconnect. I spent weeks researching the perfect gift, those matching Apple Watches, engraved, the newest models, something I knew they'd love but would never buy themselves. I wrapped them beautifully, wrote heartfelt cards, even practiced a little toast. I was determined to be early for dinner at Canlis, one of Seattle's most exclusive restaurants. I bought a new dress, a sophisticated navy blue that cost way more than I usually spent, because I wanted to feel good. I felt confident. Hopeful. I truly believed this milestone might, just might, mark a new, better chapter for us. As I left my apartment that evening, I was genuinely excited. Despite our complicated, messy history, they were still my family. And I loved them. I wanted to celebrate their 30 years, to honor the family they had created, flaws and all. I checked myself in the mirror one last time, grabbed my keys, that carefully wrapped gift box, and walked out into what would become the most pivotal, heart-shattering night of my adult life. What should have been a quick 20-minute drive to Canlis, this fancy restaurant, turned into a full-blown nightmare commute. Seattle traffic is legendary, but that night? It was pure chaos. A sudden downpour hit, cutting visibility down to zero. I gripped the steering wheel, my anxiety practically a living thing in my chest, watching the clock tick, tick, tick. Come on, I muttered, my fingers tapping a desperate rhythm on the wheel, just staring at an endless line of red brake lights. I was already 15 minutes late when I hit the real problem, a 3-car pileup on Aurora Avenue. Traffic was dead stop. Police lights flashed in the distance. Drivers ahead of me were turning off their engines, a universally dreaded sign you're not going anywhere soon. I immediately grabbed my phone. Called my mom. No answer. Called my dad. Straight to voicemail. Tried Stephanie. Voicemail again. I even sent a text to the family group chat, stuck in traffic due to accident. Will be late but on my way. The messages showed as delivered. But they stayed unread. By the time I finally got to the restaurant, I was almost an hour late. The maitre d' gave me this pitying smile as I rushed in, hair slightly frizzed from the rain. The Williams party? Lakeside private room. They've already been served the main course. My heart just sank. It felt like walking through molasses as I made my way through the elegant restaurant. And when I stepped into that private dining room, it was like walking into a party I hadn't been invited to. Everyone was there. My parents, looking regal at the head of the table. Stephanie and her husband, Daniel. My niece and nephew. Even my mom's sister, Aunt Patricia, and her husband. 8 places had been set, one presumably for me. But no one had waited. They were all laughing, lost in something my brother-in-law had said. Forks clinked against plates, scraping the last bits of dessert. My dad was pouring more wine. And for what felt like an eternity, no one even noticed me standing there, frozen in the doorway. It was my nephew who finally spotted me. "Oh, Aunt Cassie is here," he mumbled, barely glancing up from his chocolate cake. That's when heads turned. My mother's face, which had been beaming with laughter, shifted to this cool, almost dismissive acknowledgement. "Well, look who finally decided to join us. We thought you might not come at all. No, glad you made it. No, we were worried." Just that subtle, razor-sharp accusation that sliced deeper than any outright criticism could have. "There was an accident on Aurora," I explained, still standing there awkwardly, clutching my gift bag. I tried calling everyone. My sister, Stephanie, just shrugged. We were enjoying ourselves. Phones away during family dinner, remember Dad's rule? A rule that, I knew, only ever applied when it was convenient for them. I'd seen Stephanie checking work emails countless times during family meals before. My dad just waved a hand at the empty chair. Sit down. We'll see if the kitchen can make you something quickly. I slid into the seat, my eyes scanning the table. Empty bread basket. Empty water glasses all around me. No one had saved me any appetizers. No one had even thought to order for me, even though they knew exactly what I would have chosen. I'd been coming to Canlis with them since childhood. Always the truffle pasta. No need to trouble the kitchen, I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was tearing my face. I'm just glad to be here for the celebration. I reached into my bag, pulling out the silver-wrapped gift box with its hand-calligraphed card. Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. 30 years is an amazing accomplishment. My mother took the box with a polite thank you, then just set it aside. Unopened. My Aunt Patricia, sensing the awkwardness, finally spoke up. Shouldn't we open Cassandra's gift? Oh, of course, my mother said, as if it had completely slipped her mind. She carefully unwrapped the paper, everyone's eyes on her. When she opened the box to reveal the Apple Watches, there was this flicker of genuine appreciation. These are very nice, my father commented, picking one up. They're the newest models. I gushed eager. I even had them engraved on the back with your wedding date, and they're already set up with your favorite fitness tracking app since you both mentioned wanting to be more active. That's thoughtful, my mother said. But then she quickly closed the box. And set it aside. Again. Either of them tried the watches on. They didn't even look at the engravings. The moment of brief interest passed so quickly, I wondered if I'd imagined it. Then, 11-year-old Emma, my niece, piped up, effectively redirecting the entire room's attention. She'd already perfected her mother's talent for it. Wait until you see what Stephanie and Daniel got them. Stephanie gave a smug smile as she handed my parents an envelope. Inside? Documents for a week-long, all expenses-paid trip to Hawaii. First-class airfare. A beachfront suite at the Four Seasons. We know how much you both love Maui, Stephanie purred. And you deserve to be pampered. The reaction was immediate. And effusive. My mother actually teared up, getting up to hug both Stephanie and Daniel. My father clapped his son-in-law on the shoulder with a booming, "This is incredible, son." For the next 15 minutes, the conversation revolved entirely around Hawaii. Which beaches they'd visit. Which restaurants they'd try. Activities they might enjoy. My gift sat forgotten on the side table. Not even a passing mention in the excited discussion. That's the difference between having a real career and just doing freelance work, my brother-in-law, Daniel, said in what he thought was a quiet aside to my father. But his voice carried. When you make real money, you can do real gifts. No one, not a single person, contradicted him. No one defended me. My mother simply nodded in agreement, showing my end resort photos on her phone. I sat there silently, picking at the chocolate mousse someone had belatedly thought to offer me. It tasted like ashes in my mouth. As the buzzing excitement over the Hawaii trip finally started to die down, my mother reached for her purse. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe another card? A photo? Oh, how wrong I was. Before I forget, she said, her voice suddenly taking on this chillingly practical tone that immediately put every single one of my nerves on high alert. She unfolded it, smoothing what I now saw was a restaurant bill flat against the crisp white tablecloth. We need to settle the dinner check. My dad, Jack, nodded in agreement, a proud little smirk on his face. Quite a celebration we've had. My eyes darted to the bill across the table, and my jaw nearly dropped. The total at the bottom, $1,000. Even for Canlis, one of Seattle's most notoriously expensive restaurants, that seemed insane for 8 people. We reserved the private room and ordered the premium wine pairing, my mother explained, noticing my expression. And of course, the full tasting menu for everyone, since it was such a special occasion. And then she did it. She slid the bill. Right across the table. Directly to me. We thought you might like to take care of this, Cassandra, she said, that smile plastered on her face, but it never, ever reached her eyes. Since you missed most of the dinner, it would be a nice way for you to contribute to the celebration. I just stared at the bill. Then at my mother. I was waiting. Waiting for someone to burst out laughing, to say, "Gotcha." It's all a joke. But no one did. Instead, there was this heavy, expectant silence. You want me to pay for a dinner I barely attended? My voice was a whisper, smaller than I wanted it to be. Well, we did reserve a spot for you, my father chimed in, as if that explained everything. The restaurant charges by the person, and we had to pay for your place setting even though you were late. Plus, it's not like you have other expenses, my mother added, the dismissal heavy in her voice. No children to feed, no mortgage. Before I could even formulate a response, Stephanie, my sister, let out this short, sharp laugh. Oh, come on, Cassie. Don't act so surprised. You've always been our family ATM since you won that money. Why stop now? The table erupted. Laughter. Even my niece and nephew joined in, bless their innocent hearts, probably not even grasping the cruelty of the joke. Daniel, my brother-in-law, actually raised his wine glass in a mock toast to Cassandra's good fortune, which we all get to enjoy. More laughter. More clinking glasses. I sat there, frozen. That $1,000 bill in front of me started to blur as I fought back tears. 3 years. 3 years of moments just like this flashed through my mind. The loans that were never repaid. The extravagant gifts I was expected to provide. The vacations I had been subtly pressured to subsidize. Each request, always dressed up. A special circumstance. A one-time need. Family obligation. But Stephanie's casual, brutal comment? It stripped away every single pretense. It revealed the ugly truth I had been so desperately avoiding. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't a sister. I was a convenient source of funds. Remember when she paid for Emma's entire summer camp without even hesitating? My mother reminisced, as if I wasn't sitting right there. $8,000 for 6 weeks. And the new roof for the lake house last year, my father added, that was what, 15,000? 22,000? I corrected quietly, but no one even heard me. Oh, and remember Christmas? Stephanie continued, clearly warming to her theme of public humiliation. When she got everyone those ridiculously expensive gifts, and all we had for her was that scarf from Nordstrom Rack? My aunt, bless her, at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Perhaps we should change the subject, she suggested softly. But my mother waved her concern away. Oh, Cassandra knows we're just teasing. She's happy to help the family. Right, dear? All eyes turned to me. Expectant. Not with gratitude. Not with affection. But with this chilling, entitled anticipation. I saw it. Clearly. They were waiting for me to play my assigned role. The golden goose. The family ATM. I looked down at that $1,000 bill again, and suddenly, it wasn't just a dinner check. It was a symbol. A symbol of our entire relationship. They had been dining out on my generosity, literally and figuratively, for years. And for what? Not for love. Not for respect. Not for true inclusion. Just for what I could provide. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, a punch to the chest that stole my breath. I had been buying their affection, and they had been selling me a counterfeit version of family love. Is that what I am to all of you? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Just an ATM? There was an awkward, gut-wrenching pause. My father tried a feeble attempt at damage control. Now, Cassandra, no one thinks of you that way. We're family. We support each other. Support each other? I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. When was the last time any of you supported me? When I landed that Microsoft contract last year, did anyone even remember to congratulate me the next day? When I was sick with pneumonia last winter, did anyone bring me soup? Or even check on me? Silence descended over the table, heavy and damning. My mother fiddled with her napkin. Stephanie suddenly found her wine glass intensely fascinating. I thought so, I said softly, the ache in my voice unmistakable. It only goes one way, doesn't it? My brother-in-law, Daniel, cleared his throat, always the pragmatist. Look, if you're having money problems, just say so. No need to make a scene. That comment, with its complete, utter misunderstanding of everything I was trying to say. That was the final straw. I wasn't angry about the money itself. I was heartbroken about what it represented. A family that valued me only for what I could give them. Not for who I was. The silence after Daniel's tone-deaf comment stretched, probably only seconds, but it felt like an eternity. I could feel all their eyes on me, waiting. waiting to see if I'd back down, like I always had. Waiting to see if I'd pull out my wallet and write the check with a forced smile, just to keep the peace. But in that moment, something inside me irrevocably shifted. A lifetime of seeking their approval, of trying to earn their love through generosity, of accepting meager scraps of affection in return for massive financial support, it all crystallized into one blindingly clear thought. I deserve better than this. With deliberate, almost unnerving calm, I picked up that $1,000 bill. My mother's expression relaxed slightly, already assuming I was reaching for my purse. Instead, I held the paper between both hands. And slowly, methodically, I began to tear it into pieces. The sound of ripping paper cut through the sudden, stunned silence like a knife. First in half. Then quarters. Then smaller and smaller, until confetti-sized pieces fluttered onto the pristine white tablecloth. My mother gasped. "Cassandra, what do you think you're doing?" I looked her directly in the eyes. And in that moment, I felt myself setting free. "Have you lost your mind?" my father demanded, his face flushing with fury. "That bill needs to be paid." "Then pay it yourselves," I replied, my voice steady, clear, and ringing with a newfound strength. "I am done being the family bank." I stood up, smoothing down my dress, my hands surprisingly steady despite the furious pounding in my chest. For 3 years I have given. And given. Money for renovations. Money for vacations. Money for cars and camps and college funds. Did any of you ever say thank you? Did anyone ever offer to pay me back? Did anyone even acknowledge that these weren't obligations, but gifts from someone who hoped it might finally make you see her as worthy of your love? My sister, Stephanie, rolled her eyes, classic Stephanie. "Oh, please. Don't be so dramatic. We're family. Of course, we love you." "Do you, Stephanie?" I shot back, the words biting. "When was the last time you called me just to talk, not to ask for something? When was the last time any of you showed interest in my life? My work? My achievements?" "We're busy people," my mother said defensively, her voice tight. "We have responsibilities, careers, children, and I don't." I countered, my voice rising. "My time? My work? My life is less valuable because I chose a different path? I have supported this family financially for years. I helped pay for Emma's braces when your insurance wouldn't cover the full amount. I covered the deposit when Dad's car broke down. I bought you that diamond bracelet for your birthday last year, Mom. The one you're wearing right now." My mother's hand instinctively flew to the tennis bracelet on her wrist. A $14,000 gift I had saved for months to buy her. If we are truly family, if we truly support each other, then why am I the only one giving? Why is my worth to this family measured only by what I can provide financially? My nephew, Charlie, looked up, genuinely confused. "But Aunt Cassie, you have all that lottery money. You're rich." "I was never rich, Charlie," I said gently, trying to explain to a child what adults couldn't grasp. $200,000 is a lot, but it's not unlimited wealth. And most of what I had left went to all of you. My father's expression shifted, not to remorse, but to cold calculation. "If you're having money problems, you should have said something. We could have been more considerate." That response. It told me everything. Not, "We value you regardless of money." But we would have asked for less if we knew the well was running dry. "This isn't about whether I can afford it," I said, picking up my purse. "This is about respect. About being valued for who I am, not what I can give. And clearly, that's not happening here." Stephanie scoffed. "You're being ridiculously sensitive. It was just a joke about the ATM thing." "Was it, Stephanie?" I asked, my gaze piercing. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like the most honest anyone has been with me in years. I reached into my purse, pulled out my wallet. I extracted $300 in cash, more than covering what would have been my portion of the meal had I actually been present to eat it, and placed it deliberately on the table. "This covers my share. The rest is on all of you. Consider it the first boundary of many I will be setting from now on." My mother's face crumpled in what looked like genuine distress. "Cassandra, please. It's our anniversary. Don't ruin this special night." For a moment, just a split second, I felt that familiar, insidious pull of guilt. The ingrained need to please, to make peace, to put everyone else's feelings above my own. But then I remembered how they'd started dinner without me. How they'd dismissed my heartfelt gift. How they just laughed at my expense. I think the night was ruined long before I got here, I said quietly, my voice laced with a profound sadness. Happy anniversary. I hope the next 30 years bring you wisdom to match your longevity. With that I turned. And I walked toward the door. Cassandra Williams. You get back here right now. My father's voice, sharp with familiar authority, sliced through the air. We are not finished discussing this. I paused at the doorway, looking back one last time at the tableau. My parents' angry, bewildered faces. My sister's contemptuous eye roll. My brother-in-law's smirk. My niece and nephew's wide-eyed confusion. My aunt and uncle's uncomfortable silence. Actually, Dad, I replied, my voice strong, clear. I think we are. And then I walked out. Each step felt simultaneously like the heaviest and the lightest movement of my life. Heavy with the finality of what had just happened. Light with a sudden, unexpected liberation. The liberation of finally speaking my truth. As I drove home through the rain-slicked streets of Seattle, tears streamed down my face. But they weren't entirely tears of sadness. There was relief there, too. And something else I hadn't felt in a very long time when thinking about my family, pride. Pride in finally standing up for myself. In refusing to be defined by their limited, self-serving perception of my worth. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt both emotionally drained and strangely energized. I kicked off my heels, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat by the window, watching the city lights shimmer through the rain. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen by my family. Even if what they saw was someone they could no longer manipulate. I raised my glass in a solitary toast. To boundaries, I whispered, to the empty room. And to whatever comes next. The 3 months that followed that utterly catastrophic anniversary dinner were the hardest, but also the most profoundly transformative, of my entire adult life. I went completely radio silent with my family. It was a decision that was both agonizingly painful and incredibly liberating. Those first few weeks were a brutal battle. Doubts gnawed at me. Waves of gut-wrenching guilt would wash over me, usually late at night when my defenses were down. Had I overreacted? Was tearing up that bill just a childish tantrum? Should I have handled things differently? These questions plagued me, tangled with this deep-seated belief that turning away from family, no matter how toxic they were, was just fundamentally wrong. My phone became this strange source of anxiety and constant disappointment. Sometimes it would light up with texts or calls from my parents or Stephanie, and my heart would actually race with this foolish hope. Hope for an apology. For acknowledgement. For some genuine desire to make amends. But every single message followed the exact same, infuriating pattern. No recognition of what had happened. Zero accountability for their behavior. Just blatant attempts to drag me right back into the old dynamic. My mother would text, "Your father and I are considering renovating the lake house kitchen. Since you have such good taste, we thought you might want to contribute to the new appliances. Call me back." Stephanie would follow up with, "Emma's birthday is next month. She wants that expensive drawing tablet. The one you mentioned once. I told her you'd probably get it for her. Let me know." And then my father, the audacity, "The Hawaii trip is coming up. Your mother thought you might want to send us some spending money as an anniversary gift since you ruined the dinner. Think about it." Each message was like a fresh stab, confirming, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I had made the right decision. Yet they still stung. Every single one. They showed me just how deeply, terrifyingly entrenched this pattern was. How my family saw me first and foremost as a resource, not a human being with feelings or boundaries. Instead of wallowing in isolation, I channeled all that raw, emotional energy into rebuilding my life, on my terms. I dove into new design projects that genuinely challenged me, pushing myself creatively in ways I'd been too emotionally drained to even attempt before. I joined a local art collective, and there, I found other creative professionals who actually valued my input and respected my work. But most importantly, I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Leanne Matthews. She specialized in family dynamics and boundary setting, and our weekly sessions became this vital anchor in my new, turbulent reality. A safe space to unpack decades of emotional manipulation and suffocating, conditional love. "What you're experiencing is grief," Dr. Matthews explained during one particularly difficult session. "Not just for the relationship you've lost, but for the relationship you never had and always wanted." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. They resonated deep within my soul. I was mourning the family I had always hoped we could be, the love I had tried so desperately to buy, but could never truly obtain. Family relationships should not be transactional, she continued. Genuine love does not come with a price tag. We worked through exercises, slowly, painfully, helping me recognize my own inherent worth, entirely independent of any external validation. To understand that setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was absolutely essential for any kind of healthy relationship. I learned to identify the insidious difference between guilt as a manipulation tool and genuine remorse as a catalyst for actual change. My mother's voicemails would veer wildly between gut-wrenching guilt trips. "I can't believe you treat your own mother this way after all I've done for you," and outright angry accusations. "You always were the selfish one, even as a child." Stephanie's tactics were more direct, more dismissive. "You're being ridiculous, Cassie." So, we made a few jokes about money. "Get over yourself and grow up." Not once, not one single time, did any of them say, "I'm sorry," or "I miss you," or "What can we do to make this right?" Their concerns seemed to be focused entirely on the loss of what I could give them, not the loss of me as a person they supposedly loved. Around this time, I met Grace Chin at one of the art collective's community events. She was a photographer, new to Seattle from Chicago, and we instantly bonded over shared creative frustrations and endless midnight coffee runs. When I cautiously, hesitantly, shared some of what I was going through with my family, I braced myself for the usual platitudes about blood being thicker than water. But her response completely floored me. "My parents tried to control me through money for years," she said, so matter-of-factly. "They paid for my college, but only on the condition that I studied business instead of photography. When I finally changed my major in junior year, they cut me off completely. No warning. No discussion. Just financial abandonment." "What did you do?" I asked, amazed by her calm recounting of something so incredibly painful. "I got 3 jobs, took out loans, and finished my degree," she said. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most important. It taught me that their money was never support. It was always control." Grace became this absolutely crucial part of my support system. Someone who understood, firsthand, the agonizingly complicated intersection of family and finances. Unlike well-meaning friends who would innocently insist, "But they're your family," as if that excused all behavior, Grace recognized the stark difference between healthy family bonds and outright emotional manipulation. "The question isn't whether you should forgive them," she told me during one of our long conversations. "The question is, what would that forgiveness look like? Does it mean going back to the way things were, or creating something entirely new with clear boundaries?" Her perspective helped me see my situation with this incredible, painful clarity. I didn't have to choose between cutting my family off forever, or crawling back to being their perpetual financial safety net. There was a potential for a middle path. But it would require them to actually recognize the problem and be willing to change. As the weeks slowly, steadily passed, I found myself growing stronger, more centered. The suffocating guilt that had initially consumed me began to recede, replaced by a quiet, determined confidence in my decision. I started sleeping better, waking up without that immediate, crushing weight of family obligation pressing on my chest. I rediscovered old passions I had abandoned. Took a ceramics class. Went hiking with new friends. I even started dating again. My life was becoming my own in a way it never, ever had been before, shaped by my choices, rather than the expectations and endless demands of others. There was loneliness sometimes, especially during holidays or when I'd see families laughing together in restaurants or parks. But it was a clean loneliness. Uncomplicated by manipulation. Unburdened by conditional acceptance. By the 3rd month of my self-imposed family exile, the constant barrage of calls and texts had slowed to a mere trickle. Maybe they'd finally accepted I was serious. Or maybe they'd just found other sources of financial support. Whatever the reason, I was grateful for the respite. Grateful for the chance to continue healing without the constant reopening of the wound. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, as I sat at my desk, deep in a brand design for a new client, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Little did I know, this call would force me to confront my family's situation in a way I never could have possibly anticipated. It was a twist I truly never saw coming. "Is this Cassandra Williams?" The voice on the other end of the line was crisp, professional, but with this undeniable note of gravity that instantly put every fiber of my being on high alert. "Yes, this is she," I replied cautiously, instinctively saving my design work and giving the call my full, undivided attention. "This is Thomas Brennan, Senior Credit Manager at First Security Bank." I need to speak with you regarding some unusual activity on your accounts. Do you have a few minutes to discuss this matter privately? My stomach dropped. Like physically dropped. Had I been hacked? Seriously? With everything else going on in my life, financial fraud was the absolute last thing I needed. Yes, of course, I managed, moving from my desk to the living room sofa, needing the comfort for what I already knew would be a deeply stressful conversation. What kind of unusual activity are we talking about? There was a brief, pregnant pause before Mr. Brennan continued, his words landing like blows. Miss Williams, our fraud detection system flagged an attempt to open a new credit account in your name. The application was submitted last Thursday, with your social security number, date of birth, and other personal information, but certain discrepancies triggered our security protocols. I haven't applied for any new credit accounts, I confirmed, my anxiety spiking. Was someone trying to steal my identity? My mind raced. That appears to be the case, he replied, his tone softening slightly. However, this situation is somewhat delicate. Our investigation indicates that the application was submitted by someone you know. The primary applicant was listed as Jack Williams with you as a co-authorized user, but the signature purporting to be yours failed our verification process. The room seemed to spin. The world tilted sideways. Jack Williams. The implication hit me like a train. Jack Williams, that's my father, I whispered, the words barely audible. Yes, Mr. Brennan confirmed, his voice full of genuine regret. I'm sorry to be the bearer of this news, Miss Williams, but it appears that your father attempted to open a joint credit line with a $25,000 limit using your personal information without your authorization. When we called the contact number on the application to verify some details, the individual identifying himself as Jack Williams became agitated and insisted the application was legitimate. I pressed my fingertips against my closed eyelids, trying to process this. My own father. He had attempted to commit identity theft against me. The betrayal. It cut deeper than any financial exploitation ever could have. This was a violation. The application included copies of what appeared to be your driver's license and social security card. Mr. Brennan continued, his voice steady. May I ask if you have provided these documents to your father recently, or if he would have access to them? I thought back. The last time I'd visited my parents' home, months before the anniversary dinner. I'd brought a document folder with me for some insurance paperwork, leaving it briefly unattended in the study while I helped my mother in the kitchen. Had he? Had my own father taken that opportunity to make copies? The thought made me physically ill. No, I said firmly, my voice shaking with disgust. I did not provide those documents or authorize him to use my information in any way. Mr. Brennan's voice took on a more formal, somber tone. Miss Williams, I need to inform you that what your father attempted constitutes identity theft, which is a criminal offense. As the potential victim, you have several options. We have already flagged this as fraudulent in our system and denied the application. But you may wish to file a police report, particularly to protect yourself from any further attempts. Has he done this before? I asked, a chilling thought blooming in my chest. Was this the first attempt, or just the first time he'd been caught? There was a telling pause. I cannot discuss specific details of other applications due to privacy regulations, Mr. Brennan said carefully. However, I can tell you that our system shows previous credit inquiries in your name from several different financial institutions over the past 2 months. The implications were stark. Unmistakable. This wasn't some one-time, desperate act. This was a calculated pattern of behavior. My father had been systematically trying to use my identity to access credit, likely ever since I had cut off contact after that anniversary dinner. What do I need to do to protect myself? I asked, grabbing a notepad and pen, desperate for control. Mr. Brennan was incredibly thorough and compassionate, outlining the steps. Place a fraud alert on my credit reports. Consider a credit freeze. Monitor my accounts closely. Change all my passwords. And yes, consider filing a police report. He even offered to connect me with the bank's identity theft response team. As we neared the end of the conversation, he hesitated, then added, Miss Williams, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but we see these situations more often than people realize when they involve family members. They can be particularly complicated emotionally. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need any assistance navigating this process. After thanking him and ending the call, I sat motionless on my sofa. The notepad, full of security steps, was clutched in my hand, feeling strangely heavy. The afternoon sun streamed through my windows, casting everything in a warm, golden light that felt so utterly at odds with the darkness of what I had just learned. My own father. He hadn't just tried to take advantage of my generosity. He had crossed a fundamental line. He'd stooped to criminal behavior. Had he always seen me this way? As nothing more than a resource to be exploited? Was there ever genuine love there? Or had it always been conditional, tied to what I could provide? I thought about the earth-shattering consequences of filing a police report. My father could face criminal charges. It could utterly tear apart what remained of my family. And yet not filing a report would leave me vulnerable to future attempts. It would send the message that his behavior was somehow acceptable. The hardest part, the most gut-wrenching realization, was acknowledging that this wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment on his part. The multiple credit inquiries Mr. Brennan had alluded to? They screamed of a calculated, ongoing effort. This realization transformed my pain into something sharper, colder, more defined. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a fundamental, unforgivable breach of trust from someone who should have protected me, cherished me. I picked up my phone again. Not to call the police, but to call Dr. Matthews. I needed her guidance before making such a monumental decision. As the phone rang, I looked at the collection of family photos I still had displayed on my bookshelf. Holidays. Graduations. Vacations. Moments that I had once treasured as irrefutable evidence of strong family bonds. Now, they seemed as fraudulent as my father's credit application. Whatever decision I made next would irrevocably change those relationships forever. There would be no going back. No pretending everything was normal. No sweeping this under the rug with an awkward apology at Thanksgiving dinner. The thought was both terrifying and strangely, profoundly freeing. Dr. Matthews answered on the third ring. Dr. Matthews speaking. It's Cassandra, I said, my voice steadier than I ever expected. Something has happened with my father, and I need to talk through my options. As I began to explain the situation, detailing every horrifying fact, I realized I was entering yet another phase of this agonizing journey with my family. But for the very first time, I was approaching it with clear eyes. Free from the thick, suffocating fog of guilt and obligation that had clouded my judgment for so very long. After endless, grueling discussions with Dr. Matthews, weighing every single option, I finally made a decision. It was a decision that honored both my desperate need for self-protection and the utterly tangled, complicated mess of feelings I still had for my family. I would not file criminal charges against my father. But I would take every other possible measure to protect myself and establish unbreakable boundaries. I started by putting a complete, ironclad freeze on my credit at all three major bureaus, making it absolutely impossible for anyone, including my father, to open new accounts in my name. I changed all my passwords. Set up relentless fraud alerts. I even went so far as to have my mail delivered to a private post office box instead of my apartment. Then came the hardest part. Confronting my family with the brutal truth I now knew. Rather than calling or meeting in person, which I knew would only give them an opportunity to manipulate the narrative with crocodile tears or furious accusations, I wrote a detailed, searing email. I sent it to my parents, my sister, and my aunt and uncle, laying out exactly what had happened. I have recently discovered that Dad attempted to commit identity theft by opening credit accounts in my name without my knowledge or consent, I wrote, each word a painful liberation. This is not only a profound betrayal of trust, but also a criminal act. While I have chosen not to press charges out of consideration for our family, I want everyone to understand that this crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. I am implementing complete financial protection measures and will have no further contact with anyone who minimizes, excuses, or enables this behavior. The responses? They came quickly. And they followed predictable, soul-crushing patterns. My father? No reply at all. Just silence. My sister, Stephanie? She responded with defensive anger, accusing me of exaggerating and trying to destroy the family over a simple misunderstanding. My aunt expressed shock and sympathy, but, of course, urged reconciliation for the sake of family harmony. My mother's response, however, was something I truly hadn't expected. 3 days after my email, she called. I nearly didn't answer. But something, some flicker of hope I hadn't extinguished yet, told me to take the call. Cassandra? Her voice. It sounded smaller than I remembered, lacking its usual authoritative, commanding tone. Can we meet? Just you and me, please? Against my better judgment, and Dr. Matthew's cautious advice, I agreed. A coffee shop near my apartment. A public place. A clear path to the exit if things went south. I arrived early, chose my escape route, and ordered a latte I was far too nervous to drink. When my mother walked in, I was genuinely struck by how much she had aged in just 3 months. Her typically immaculate appearance seemed slightly disheveled. Her posture less confident. She spotted me, made her way over, hesitating for a moment before sitting down opposite me. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, nervously folding and unfolding a napkin. "I know you have every reason to refuse." I waited. Silently. Determined not to make this any easier for her. "What your father did was wrong," she said, finally meeting my eyes directly, her gaze wavering. "I want you to know that I had no idea he was doing this. I would never have condoned it." "But you condoned treating me like a bank account for years," I replied evenly, my voice a steady blade. "You participated in it. Encouraged it. Laughed about it at the anniversary dinner." She flinched. The reminder clearly stung. But she didn't deny it. "Yes," she admitted softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I did. We all did. And I'm sorry, Cassandra. Truly sorry." The apology. The one I had waited years to hear. It almost didn't register at first. I had become so accustomed to excuses and deflections that genuine sincerity caught me completely off guard. "Your father has a problem," she continued, her voice gaining a desperate urgency. "He has been gambling for years. Something I tried to ignore because it was easier than confronting it. The nice lifestyle, the renovations, the vacations, all of it has been built on sand. We are deeply in debt. Have been for years. And it's only gotten worse since you stopped helping." "Helping?" I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "Is that what you call it when you treat your daughter like an ATM?" She winced again, a raw, real pain in her eyes. "You're right to be angry. We took advantage of your generosity and your love. When you won that money, we saw it as a solution to our problems, rather than what it actually was, your opportunity for financial security." As my mother continued to talk, a fuller, devastating picture emerged. My father's gambling had spiraled completely out of control. They had remortgaged the house twice. Credit cards were maxed out. That successful image they had meticulously maintained, the one I had always felt so pressured to live up to, it was a complete, elaborate facade. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice tinged with suspicion. "Are you hoping I'll bail you out again?" She shook her head firmly, her eyes brimming. "No. I'm telling you because you deserve the truth. And because I want to apologize for how we have treated you. Not just recently, but for years. We measured your worth by the wrong metrics, Cassandra. We failed to see and appreciate the amazing woman you have become." Tears finally formed in her eyes, spilling over. But unlike the performative emotion I had seen so often in the past, these seemed heartbreakingly, utterly genuine. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I just want you to know that I'm getting help. I've joined a support group for families affected by gambling addiction, and I'm learning so much about codependency and enabling. I'm trying to convince your father to get help too, but he's not ready yet." "And Stephanie?" I asked. "Does she know about all this?" My mother sighed, a heavy, weary sound. "I tried to talk to her. She doesn't want to hear it. She's built her life around the same illusions we created. Acknowledging the truth would mean facing some very uncomfortable realities about herself and her choices." We talked for nearly 2 hours that afternoon. Not just about the recent events, but about the insidious patterns that had been established throughout my entire childhood. The constant comparisons. The conditional approval. The relentless emphasis on appearance over substance. For the very first time, my mother listened more than she spoke. And when she did speak, it was without the defensive justifications I had come to expect. Before we parted, I made my position crystal clear. "I'm willing to have a relationship with you, Mom, but it will be different from before. I will not provide financial support of any kind. That boundary is non-negotiable. And I need time and space to see if the changes you're describing are real and lasting." She nodded, accepting these terms without argument. "And your father?" I asked, my voice firm. "I cannot have any contact with him right now. What he did was not just hurtful, it was criminal. He violated my trust in a fundamental way. Maybe someday, if he gets help and makes amends, that might change. But not now. The months that followed were a long, arduous process of rebuilding. But this time, on my foundations. I maintained my boundaries firmly, like a solid, unyielding wall. But I did allow my mother limited contact through weekly phone calls. I helped her find resources for financial counseling and support groups, but I made it unequivocally clear, I would not be contributing to their financial recovery. That was a journey they absolutely needed to make on their own. My sister, Stephanie, eventually reached out, after our mother's raw honesty, though her version of an apology left much to be desired. "I still think you overreacted," she said, classic Stephanie, "but maybe we were a bit thoughtless about the money stuff." It was a start. A tiny, almost imperceptible start. A year after that infamous anniversary dinner that had shattered and changed everything, I found myself in a completely different place, both literally and figuratively. I had moved to a new apartment in a vibrant, different neighborhood. I'd expanded my design business, taking on more fulfilling, creatively challenging projects. And I'd built a true circle of friends, people who genuinely valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. My relationship with my family remained complicated. My father finally, entered treatment for his gambling addiction. And while I maintained my distance, I didn't stand in the way of his recovery. My mother and we established a more honest, if fragile, relationship. Though the deep, unconditional closeness we had once shared, or that I had imagined we shared, remained elusive. Stephanie and I settled into a cordial but very distant dynamic, connecting mainly through occasional texts and obligatory holiday wishes. But the most profound change, the one that truly mattered, was within myself. I had learned to value my own worth, fiercely, independently, of anyone else's validation. I had discovered that setting boundaries wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an act of profound self-respect. I had found that family could be defined by choice, by the quality of connection, rather than simply by blood. On the exact anniversary of that fateful dinner, I did something for myself. I took myself out to a beautiful restaurant, sat at a table for one, and I ordered exactly what I wanted. As I raised a glass of champagne in a solitary toast, I reflected on the painful, but undeniably necessary, journey of the past year, and the incredible wisdom it had brought me. True love, I had learned, never, ever comes with a price tag. It cannot be bought or sold. It exists in the deep respect we show for each other's autonomy, in the support we offer without any expectation of return, in the pure joy we take in each other's authentic self-expression. Money may buy influence. It may buy compliance. It can certainly buy the appearance of affection. But it can never, ever purchase genuine love or respect. I had also discovered that sometimes, the healthiest love we can offer, both to ourselves and to others, is the courage to say no to harmful patterns. Setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about creating space for healthier relationships to potentially grow. And perhaps most importantly, I had learned that my value was inherent. It wasn't earned through achievements, or financial provision, or conformity to others' expectations. I was enough. Just as I was. As I finished my meal and prepared to head home, I thought about how I would finally end this chapter of my story. Not with bitterness over what had been lost, but with profound gratitude for what had been gained, self-knowledge, authentic connections, and the undeniable freedom to write the next chapters, entirely on my own terms.